Hey everybody, welcome to the Friday night, October 16th live stream for studentloanjustice.org. My name is Alan Collins, I'm founder of Student Loan Justice. We are the oldest, largest, and really the pretty much only legitimate citizens group, actually fighting for student loan justice. We've been around for 15 years now. We've been featured top story on 60 Minutes in the Los Angeles Times, New York Times, Los Angeles Times, many other places, NPR, PBS. Most recently, we were featured on Fox News, Fox Business News, Heavy.com, Newsweek, and dozens of local television stations across the country. We are fighting for the end of student loans. This is a catastrophically failed lending system by every reasonable metric or measure. It's failed, folks. It's done. It's toast. Put a fork in it. So we are calling for the cancellation of all federally owned student loans by executive order. And that's important. There's a distinction between doing something by executive order for student loans and going through Congress. And I will get into that in a bit. We are also fighting for the return of constitutional bankruptcy protections, which have been uniquely stripped from student loans. So, yeah. Cancellation of all federally owned student loans, the return of bankruptcy loans to all of the loans that the president cannot cancel directly by executive order. If you're new to the group, welcome. What took you so long to find us? We're glad you did. Tell everybody you know about this group because we are like the center of the universe in the battle for student loan justice. There are a lot of other groups out there, but they don't actually want to solve this problem. Over 15 years, we have found that the groups out there claiming to be fighting for students, unfortunately, it turns out that if they actually solved this problem, they would be out of a job, and they don't want that. They have staff to pay and salaries and big expensive offices in Washington, D.C., and so on and so forth. So what they are doing is essentially pimping this problem. They are milking this problem. Well, with this group, it's very different. I have student loans. Everybody in our group that I'm aware of just about has student loans. All of our state chapter leaders have student loans. We want to get rid of these predatory student loans. So you came to the right place. And oh, by the way, every other group out there claiming to be fighting for students, their plans are lame. Their plans will never work. Some of their plans actually would benefit the private lenders. So they're sort of in the tank with the bad guys. So anyways, I'm just telling you right now, hopefully you'll trust me, take my word for it, but by all means, go and check out all those other groups and see how they run you around and see how they try to sell you stuff and get you to rejigger your loans and so on and so forth. People are terrible. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. But anyways, we don't suffer from any of those corruptions. We survive and thrive, by the way, only on typically very meager donations. That's it. Donations from financially distressed student loan borrowers. And believe me, it ain't much, but it does allow us to keep our internet and keep like the lights on and stuff like that. So on that note, I should probably do a plug for donations. Go to our website, studentloanjustice.org/support, if you could support this very worthwhile and timely fight that we have on our hands. So tonight I want to talk, and by the way, if you have any questions or comments, please throw them up. I would love to hear from you. This is our problem, and I know it's kind of hard to wrap your eyeball or your mind around this problem. It's fairly complicated in many ways. It's really not complicated. It's actually very simple, but if you have student loans, it seems really complicated, and so I get that. Luckily, I've been living and breathing this issue since like 2004. We've broken some of the biggest news stories on this topic in years. In fact, we touched off the largest scandal in the history of higher education way back in the day in 2006 when our research and us, me and our members, were featured top story on 60 Minutes. So we have seen this problem grow from I'm going to say threatening to proportions to nationally catastrophic proportions. And so believe me when I tell you today, right now, that this is indeed a catastrophically failed lending system. Two quick data points to back that up. Even before the coronavirus, 80% of all borrowers were never going to be able to repay their loans. They were either in default, forbearance, deferment, or otherwise delinquent, or they were paying and paying and paying. That's a very smaller subset of that 80%. Like maybe 15 or 20% of that 80%. They were paying and paying and paying, but their balances were going up. So 80% of all borrowers today were headed for default. Like, even before the coronavirus pandemic. So it's a failed lending system. By comparison, the default rate for subprime home mortgage loans, which most people would agree is a failed lending system, was 20%, and we are headed for 80%. So what's that telling you? Another little data point for you. The default rate of the class of 2004, so people who graduated or maybe didn't graduate in 2004, the default rate for those people is 40%. We already know that. Like by 2021 or so, their default rate is going to be 40%. So that class of borrowers, that class of people was only borrowing like $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 on average. Today, the average undergrad, we're talking about all undergrads here, average undergrad is borrowing something like $40,000. So borrowing has more than tripled since the class of 2004, which has a default rate of 40%. So what do you think the default rate for more recent students is? Like, take your best guess. 60%? Yeah. 70%? Yeah. 80%? Yeah, probably. 90%? Yeah, it could be. Well, just remember, almost nobody is paying on their federal student loans now today. And quite frankly, folks, I don't think anyone ever will again. This is a failed lending system. When they tell everybody to start paying their loans again, very few people will do it. And very few people should. In fact, nobody should. We shouldn't be feeding this nationally threatening big government beast. We should not be. So tonight I want to quickly talk about why we have to push Joe Biden so hard. Now, let me preface this. This could be a pretty touchy conversation. Let me preface this by saying that for many months, going back to when we lived in Iowa for 8 months, following all the candidates around, going back to last summer, like not this summer, but last summer, 2019, we set a fair threshold for what it would take for our group to endorse all the various presidential candidates. And the bar that we set was this: that we would endorse any candidate, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Bernie Sanders, you name it. We would endorse them if, at a minimum, they pledged to return bankruptcies protections to student loans by executive order. So there's two ways to return bankruptcy to student loans. Congress can pass a bill that deletes this one line of federal code that makes bankruptcy the same for student loans as it is for all other loans in the country. And lo and behold, we have two great bills to fight for: S 1414 in the Senate, HR 2648 in the House. And if you have private loans, by the way, in other words, if you have student loans that are not owned directly by the federal government, you need these bills to pass, S 1414, HR 2648. But the president can also return bankruptcy to student loans by executive order, by or by directing the Department of Education and its contractors to stop opposing student loan borrowers in bankruptcy proceedings. So that's not a perfect solution, but it's pretty good. So yeah, that's our minimum threshold for endorsement. And to that end, I am very happy to, and maybe proud to report that we, at this point, have been able to endorse Howie Hawkins of the Green Party, also Harry Berger, also of the Green Party, who's running for Congress, and almost certainly there's another guy in Texas, Green Party, who we will be able to endorse. So that didn't sit well with a lot of our members, lo and behold, a couple days ago when I announced our endorsement of Howie Hawkins for president. A lot of people see the Green Party as a threat, going back to the days of Ralph Nader, where it was a close election and people voted Green, and if those people would have voted for one of the major, or if they would have voted for Al Gore, then Al Gore would have won, that sort of thing. And I can appreciate that. I truly can. But I would like to ask you all to appreciate the fact that our group is not blue no matter who. We just aren't. 60% of our members identify as being either politically independent or Republican. And I will be the first to admit that the Republicans, as a party, have been bad. They've been bad. They've been the worst party, for sure, on the student loan issue. Like, our bankruptcy legislation, until recently, had only one Republican in both Houses and Senate on the bills. Republicans have not been our friends, certainly on getting bankruptcy protections for student loans, and probably even less so on getting these loans canceled, which must happen, by the way. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But folks, the Democrats are no knights in shining armor. I'm telling you. We've been doing this for 15 years now. 15 years. We endorsed Obama strongly without any strong pledge from him. And we watched for 4 years, for 8 years. 8 years under Obama, we saw a lot of hopey, changey talk coming out of the Democrats and the president, and absolutely nothing got done. Nothing. And that was under like a year or two of Democratic control of the House and the Senate and the presidency, the trifecta. So, I'm sorry to say that we will not be buffaloed or bullied into doing blue no matter who. We will not. We trust politicians individually as far as we can bowl them. So in other words, we've got to see it in writing from a candidate if they want to get our endorsement anymore. We will not be taken for granted. We won't be held hijacked. We won't be held hostage. We won't allow that because this problem is too big. It's too big and too threatening. And if you have any thoughts on that, I'm very happy to respond. But that is just the fact, folks. If you blindly trust either party, or any party for that matter, including the Green Party, history and 15 years of experience has shown us that they will take you for granted and they will do nothing for you. And so right now we have endorsed Howie Hawkins, the Green Party. We would love to endorse Joe Biden. And I know a lot of you are going, Joe Biden sounds like he has a really good student loan plan. And I know, it sounds like Joe Biden does have a really good student loan plan. He's saying, I'm going to cancel loans. And some press people are even reporting he's going to cancel loans for everyone who went to public college up to $125,000 a year earnings. And, he's going to cancel loans. And he's for bankruptcy. He adopted Elizabeth Warren's bankruptcy plan. Yeah. And, if all that stuff that I just said were true, I would agree with you. I'd say, yeah, that's a good plan. Worth endorsing. But that's not the case, folks. It is not the case. Look, we live and breathe the student loan issue. We look very carefully and closely at all of the candidates' stated, written, and even spoken agendas on the student loan issue. And Joe Biden's agenda is absolutely and utterly untrustworthy at this time. He makes you want to think that he's going to cancel student loans, cancel maybe even all student loans for people who went to public college earning up to $125,000 a year. That's a lot of people, I'm sure. It's maybe you. But the fact of the matter, he is not going to do that. Go to joebiden.com. Look at, number one, Beyond High School, that little part of his platform. Read that with a fine-tooth comb. Go to the part of his platform which talks about bankruptcy reform. And you will see that Joe Biden's loan cancellation plans are, first of all, even on paper, they're lame. It's up to $10,000 for everybody. And then, that's really it. On April 9th, he said he wanted to forgive tuition-related student debt for undergrads who went to public schools and earn up to $125,000 a year. He did say that he wanted to do that and that his team was putting a plan together to do that. But folks, that was in April. And to this date, anything that looks even remotely like that has appeared on his website, which is his voice, his bond, his contract with America is that website. It has not happened. It's not on their website, okay? It's just not. Go to his website. Look, it's not there. So now, when he's talking out of the side of his neck at some forum or on some Zoom Skype meeting or something, he says, "Yeah, I'm going to eliminate student loans for people earning less than $125,000." He does not actually mean that he's going to cancel your loans. Even if you were an undergrad, even if you went to public college, he's not going to. He might preclude future students from having to take out student loans because of his free tuition initiative. And I make no value judgments on his free tuition for future students pledge. Quite frankly, I would be very wary about that pledge because tuition is only one part of the total cost of college. And but anyways, we don't care about that. We don't care about future students. We don't care about future higher education financing systems. We don't care about anything like that. And it doesn't affect us, doesn't affect the 55 million people out there in the country right now who already have or are co-signed on student loans. We only care about what he's going to do right now to us, the 55 million people who vote in the country who have student loans. So first of all, his loan cancellation thing is lame. It's like $10,000 per person, which is insulting to the vast majority of our members. And by the way, that forgiven amount would probably be taxed, but whatever. But even more important, his loan cancellation proposal relies on passing a bill through Congress. And Congress, because of pay-go rules, has to find a way to pay for loan cancellation. So $10,000 per borrower is like $440 billion that Congress would have to find a way to pay for. So they'd have to either raise taxes or they'd have to cut other programs. And I'm here to tell you, folks, that is never going to happen. Even with a completely Democratic Congress, I doubt that would ever happen. But here's the kicker, folks. Even if the stars aligned and Congress actually passed a bill that did actually raise $440 billion so that they could pay for loan cancellation, the Department of Education would be put in charge of administering the program. And believe you me, that enough strings would be put into that loan cancellation program so that by the time it got to the Department of Education, they would find ways to disqualify the overwhelming majority of borrowers, out of that loan cancellation. Because if we've learned nothing over the past 15 years, we have learned that the Department of Education has no desire and no intentions of canceling any student loans. They just don't. Look at the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Success rate, 1%. In fact, less than 1% last time I checked. Disqualification rate, like 99.2%. People didn't dot their I's, they didn't cross their T's. They were in the wrong program, they didn't fill out this form, they didn't fill out that form. Who knows? The Department of Education is very good at finding nickel and dime ticky-tack reasons to disqualify people out of loan cancellation. Look at the borrower defense to repayment rule. That's a fairly long-standing rule now, where if people are lied to by their colleges, and that happened en masse, in fact, that happens universally even today, and even at the Ivy League schools, students are routinely lied to, and their families lied to, about the student loan program. But anyways, there's a borrower defense rule whereby if people can prove fraud, then they should have their loans forgiven. And typically this is for the really terrible for-profit colleges that like recruit out of homeless shelters and promise people the sun and the moon, and they're just nonsense. So by this borrower defense rule, as of like a couple years ago, something like, I want to say like 225,000 people were supposed to have gotten their loans canceled because their college provably lied to them. So the last time I checked, and this has gone back and forth in the courts, and judges have threatened the Secretary of Education with jail time for failing to cancel these loans. The last time I checked, two people had their loans forgiven. One person, two people out of like 225,000 people. So, folks, any loan cancellation plan that Joe Biden, or any other candidate for that matter, might throw up, like even Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, who we endorsed, by the way, even their loan cancellation programs were not worth the paper they were written on, because they require passing Congress to raise money and to rely on the Department of Education to cancel the loans. So anything any candidate ever says about loan cancellation that isn't by executive order is nonsense. And again, I'll talk about that in a minute. So Joe Biden's loan cancellation plan is nonsense. Pay it no mind. He may as well have said nothing. In fact, I would have appreciated it if he would have said nothing instead of what he did say, because he knows it's bullshit. His people know it's bullshit. And shame on them for shoveling bullshit into the zeitgeist. Pardon my French. And again, if you have any questions or comments, I'm very happy to defend everything I'm saying tonight. I know we have a lot of strong Trump haters or strong blue no matter who people, and they really don't like us endorsing third parties. I get that. But the truth is important, and you people need to know the truth about Joe Biden's platform. Now, first, I should say, Donald Trump has no platform. Donald Trump has been an absolute and utter disaster on student loans in the first 3.5 years of his presidency. I mean, worse than a disaster. He's been terrible. Him and Betsy DeVos have been evil. And maybe not Trump so much because he probably doesn't even care. But certainly Betsy DeVos, she knows what's going on. And she has given the keys to the swamp on this. Thank you, Ed. Going to be speaking a little French, probably from here until Election Day. So you've been warned. So getting back to my original point, the truth is important, and the truth is that Joe Biden's loan cancellation proposal is not worth the paper it's written on. And the other thing that I have to say I wish I didn't have to say this. I wish we could endorse Joe Biden. I truly do. And when he makes that pledge to return bankruptcy certainly to federal student loans by executive order, he will get our endorsement. But here's the second thing I have to tell you about Joe Biden's plan. Joe Biden, at the 11th hour of the Democratic nomination process, he said, "Hey, everybody, I am adopting Elizabeth Warren's bankruptcy agenda for student loans." And that was because of us, by the way. We put a lot of pressure on his campaign to do that. And we put a lot of pressure on Elizabeth Warren to make that pledge that I said, to return bankruptcy protection to student loans by executive order. And even we were the reason that Elizabeth Warren included bankruptcy into her agenda in the first place. So good on us good on people like Ed, who in fact lives in Massachusetts, and he could tell you far more about Elizabeth Warren than even I can, I think. But good for Joe Biden, right? I mean, Elizabeth Warren was very clearly calling for the return of bankruptcy protections to all student loans, not just private loans, all student loans across the board. And, thanks to us, Elizabeth Warren pledged to make that happen on day one as president. She said, on day one as president, I will order my Department of Education to stop opposing student loan borrowers in bankruptcy court. She put it in writing. It's on her website. Go to her website, look for it under, I think under day one or something, and you can see that pledge for yourself. Well, Joe Biden never made that pledge. He has not made that pledge. He said, hey, we're adopting Elizabeth Warren's bankruptcy platform, and you can see it here. And on his website, and I hate to say this, folks, but we've been doing this for a long time. We've seen what the bad guys write. They're very clever. They are very smart at writing stuff that makes you think they are on your side when in fact they are against you. They will write stuff, and we've seen this from all over the place. Center for American Progress, on and on and on, where they go, oh, it's so terrible that bankruptcy doesn't exist for student loans, and yeah, we think bankruptcy should exist for student loans, for qualified student loans, and for this kind of student loan, and with all these strings attached, so that by the time you actually read the fine print of what they actually mean, what they usually end up meaning is that, yeah, we will return bankruptcy protections to private student loans, but all government-backed or government-made student loans, no bankruptcy, none. And lo and behold, if you look closely at Joe Biden's language on his website, that is precisely what is happening here, folks. Go to the Joe Biden bankruptcy page. I don't know exactly what it's called, but you can find it. And he goes, the preamble's like, oh, it's terrible, the bankruptcy doesn't exist for student loans, and he even is like, yeah, I tried to do something with the 2005 bankruptcy bill, but I did the best I could to make it a better bill, but and the first thing we will do is undo that bankruptcy bill. Well, here's the thing about the 2005 bankruptcy bill, folks. It only applied to private student loans. So when Joe Biden says, oh, I'm going to undo the 2005 bill, that means I'm only going to return bankruptcy protections to private student loans. And oh, by the way, and that's what he says on his website. He goes, yeah, we're going to undo 2005. And we're adopting Elizabeth Warren's bankruptcy agenda. And here's the part that we're going to adopt. And they copied and pasted the part from Elizabeth Warren's bankruptcy plan that only pertained to private student loans. So what I'm telling you, folks, is that Joe Biden has no desire or intentions of actually fighting for, much less by executive order, returning bankruptcy to 90% of all student loans, which are federally involved. They're either owned by the federal government or insured or guaranteed by the federal government. Private loans are like 8% of all student loans. And, I don't begrudge that for those of you who hold private loans. We are fighting for the return of bankruptcy to all student loans. But folks, Joe Biden has no desire, no intentions of returning bankruptcy to federal student loans. He's trying to put one over on us. And I, for one, will not be fooled again. We saw this movie. It was called Obama Biden. And despite all the friendly, hopey, changey words over those 8 years, about $1 trillion was added in predatory student loan debt onto our backs. It is now a catastrophically failed lending system, and we're not doing that again. We saw all kinds of steps in the right direction all through the 8 years of Obama Biden. Baby steps. At least it's a step forward, at least a step in the right direction. When Obama took office, We had like $550 billion in debt on our backs, and that was a lot of money back then. When Obama left office, we had like 1.5 trillion. So he added about $1 trillion on his watch. And every few months, there would be a step in the right direction. Oh, Obama orders a feasibility study about returning bankruptcy protection to student loans. Oh, Obama introduces the new pay-as-you-earn repayment program where your loans are forgiven after 15 years. Blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff came to nothing. Nothing. All of the repayment programs are failed. The entire lending system is now catastrophically failed. We need drastic and immediate action. Which brings me to my final point of the night, and I'm going to keep this short because I'm going long. I apologize for that, but it's important that you guys understand the truth. Even if you're still no blue no matter who, after hearing what I say, I'm not trying to push people away from Biden, but I am trying to tell them the truth. And I'm telling you why it is so important that our minimum requirement for an endorsement of Joe Biden or any candidate, including Donald Trump, is that they must pledge to return bankruptcy protections to student loans by executive order. And that means federal student loans, by the way, which is the only type of loan that the president can effect by an executive order. This is now a catastrophically failed lending system. Make no mistake, folks, by every reasonable metric or measure. Just before the coronavirus, 80% of the people were headed for default. Class of 2004, who's only borrowing a third of what they're borrowing today, default rate 40%. Subprime home mortgage default rate 20%. So 80% of all borrowers are going to default on their loans. It's done. It's toast. It has to be gotten rid of. So we started a petition on change.org, change.org/cancel student loans, calling on the president to cancel all federally owned student loans by executive order. Now, unlike all the nonsense congressional plans that we're seeing everywhere, the president can cancel these loans without needing congressional approval, without needing it to get a bill passed through Congress, and without needing to raise $1 or $2 trillion or some ridiculous amount of money to pay for these loans. Because, folks, think about it. The taxpayers already paid for these loans many years ago. 85% of all student loans are owned directly by the federal government. So the taxpayers already paid. And they didn't pay much, by the way. Of the 1.5 trillion or so federal portfolio and directly federal owned loans outstanding, my best guess is that maybe 400 billion of that is actual original principal. The rest is like interest or penalties and fees or new loan repackaging fees, all that stuff baked into a new loan. So it's not original principal, it's other stuff. So the taxpayers didn't pay much for these loans, and the president could cancel them tomorrow, whether it's Donald Trump or the next president, could cancel them tomorrow with the stroke of his pen. He wouldn't need to raise taxes, wouldn't need to cut other programs. In other words, wouldn't have to spend one dime, and it would not add one penny to the national debt. So think about all the other stimulus that we're doing right now. We're throwing $500 billion, maybe $1 trillion in PPP loans at businesses across the country in the form of loans, but they don't need to be paid back. So, and by the way, all that adds to the national debt. The taxpayers, one way or another, at some point down the road, are going to have to pay for that. And I could talk about all the other trillions in stimulus that we've thrown out, but suffice it to say, all of the other stimulus stuff that we've done is all adding to the national debt, or it needs to be paid for by raising taxes or cutting from other programs. Student loans are by far and away the most obvious, cheapest, easiest, most expedient, best targeted, and most appropriate way to stimulate this economy massively. And quite frankly, the pledge for bankruptcy is our minimum threshold. But dudes, the most obvious, easiest way to stimulate the economy whether this president or the next, is to simply cancel all federally owned student loans. And I would add, return bankruptcy protections to the loans that cannot be canceled directly by the president. So we've got like 732,000 signatures on our petition, folks. We've been featured on many places. I think I already said heavy.com and Newsweek and Fox News and Fox Business and Yahoo News, many other places. So the best thing that any of you can be doing right now, and this is my final point, the call to action to you tonight right now is two things. Number one, contact Joe Biden's campaign through the website. If you go to joebiden.com, scroll all the way down and go to the contact thing, you can fill out a form that gets a message to their campaign. And it does work, by the way. They do read these things. And you tell Joe Biden, well, you tell him what you want. What I would tell him is, hey, man, you're not fooling me. I see exactly what you're doing with the student loan thing. I'm not impressed. What you need to do, Mr. Biden, is make the same pledge that Elizabeth Warren made, that on day one as president, you will issue an executive order calling on the Department of Education and its contractors to stop opposing student loan borrowers in bankruptcy court. So you may want to rewind the past 10 seconds so you can get that verbatim. It's fairly careful wording. You have to be precise with these people. But if you forget everything I said tonight, at least remember to go to Joe Biden's website, submit a contact submission to him, and say exactly that. Okay, I'll repeat it. Say, Mr. Biden, we need you to pledge that on day one as president, you will issue an executive order calling on the Department of Education and its contractors to stop opposing student loan borrowers in bankruptcy court. Now, make no mistake, Joe Biden and his staff, his campaign manager, who I spoke with more than a few times, know very well that we need them to do that and that we want them to do that. But they need to hear it from you. So if you forget everything I said tonight, at least do that. The last thing I will say is over this weekend, this is the critical time in this election right now. And as quickly as we can get up to 1 million signatures on our petition is the better. I hope we could get up to 1 million by tomorrow. We've got 732,000 signatures, not that far to go at all. If everybody who already signed added one person, that would be 1.5 million. If everybody who already signed got two people to sign, that would be 2.5 million. So we're well within range, but it all depends on how hard you sitting there fight. And it's not even a fight. Whether or not you sitting there get off your ass and take 7 minutes to tweet about the petition, to get everybody you know with student loans to sign, maybe call a news organization, tell them to report on the petition, and obviously to sign the petition, and do whatever else you can think of. Because, folks, we are the only game in town. We are the only group in existence in the United States or the world with actually the right plan for this. Now, I will say that thankfully 3 weeks ago, Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Schumer actually stole our idea. And this was the day that Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, by the way, right when we were starting to go viral with Heavy and Newsweek and Fox News and all these people. Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Schumer all of a sudden came up with a press release and a Senate resolution calling on the president to cancel student loans by executive order. So son of a bitch. Wow. I'm not going to say they stole our idea. Well, okay, yeah, no, actually, I'm going to say they stole our idea. You can say appropriated. You can say it in a polite way. And I'm glad they did it. I mean, this is the obvious solution to the problem. But folks, I'm telling you that besides that thing that happened, don't count on any other group in existence besides ours fighting for this, the only actual way that these loans are going to be canceled. We are it. I know it doesn't seem like it. I know it's like, who's that guy? It's like, he looks like a redneck hunter guy or something. But no, I'm telling you folks, it's the truth. We are the only group in existence fighting this fight. And I mean, it seems to me that we are the only group actually telling the truth about this issue too. But anyways, I'm not going to beat my chest. Just look around, and if you think some of the other groups are actually fighting for you, you're wrong. We are the pioneers. The 15,000 people on our Facebook group here now, right now, watching me live. Well, fewer than that are actually watching live, but we are it. We are the pioneers. We are the tip. Not only are we the tip of the spear, folks, we are the spear. Not only are we the eye of the hurricane, we are the storm. So I don't want to put any pressure on you or anything, but we are ground zero. We are the guys and women that are going to either win this battle or not. So, as individuals, you sitting there, me sitting here, we have to punch a little bit above our weight, because yeah, our own financial fate is in our hands. Hey, Ryan Salek. Not only is our fate in our hands, but the fate of 44 million other people in the country, in fact, 55 million if you count co-signers, their fate is bound up with us too. And let's not forget the tens or hundreds of millions of people who are going to follow in our footsteps. They don't deserve to be conquered and enslaved. Those are John Adams' words, not mine. Like we are now threatened to be. We've got to solve this problem. We've got to win this battle. So you sitting there have got to fight. Because if we've learned nothing else over the years, I've said that twice now, but we've learned two things. First thing I already said. Second thing that we've learned is that when nobody does anything, nothing will happen. This is not a watch, wait, and worry entertainment program that you're watching here, folks. This is your life. These are your loans. So, you know, I have begged and pleaded with people to do stuff in the past. I shouldn't have to. This is your fight. And it is just a fact that as long as you sit there and do nothing and expect somebody else to pull your weight for you, it's not going to happen. You know, on any given day, well, recently, now that we've got like 800-something thousand members, I'd say maybe 1,000 people, 500,000 people are actually doing stuff every day. But, you know, there were days on this group when, like, me and people that I'm looking at right now were the only guys. Like, I could count the people actually fighting this battle on 3 fingers. Now, do you really expect that we're going to be able to solve a $2 trillion problem with 3 people? No. It starts with you, and between now and, I would say November 4th, election day, or sorry, November 3rd, election night. But really, folks, people are going to be voting by October 20th. So right now, what we do, you sitting there watching me and everybody on this group, what we do or don't do between now and like a week from now is going to tell the tale on what happens and whether or not we get this problem solved through this presidential election. So, contact Joe Biden, tell him to make that pledge so that we can endorse him, along with the other people we've endorsed already, which are not him. If you're a big Trump fan, well then contact the White House. Go to whitehouse.gov/contact and say the same thing that I said earlier. You can rewind it. I'm not going to repeat it. Do at least that. But you know, more than anything, push the petition. So 2 things. The pledge for bankruptcy to whatever candidate you like so that we can endorse them. And push the petition. Those 2 things. You can see the petition linked up right there or right there. And I've already given you enough info for all the other stuff. So, that's it. I hope that you all are as thrilled and as positive and jacked as I am. We have never been in a better position than we are now. We are catching fire. And even we are now the national thought leader on this problem, which is a catastrophically failed lending system. The Democrats are now following our lead, not the other way around. So think about that. And let's make these next weeks count. So, hope everybody has a good night. Check back on a daily basis. Things are getting very interesting. We need you. You can't sit there. We need you now to get up. Make this a half-time, part-time, full-time job from here until November 4th. So have a great weekend. We'll be here tomorrow. I hope you will be too. Good luck, Godspeed, and God bless.